brief overview.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, so the Planning Division has received a draft heritage impact assessment for a proposal to redevelop the property municipally addressed as 10 Duke Street West. This property is listed on the city's municipal heritage register as a non-designated property of cultural heritage value or interest. So that status necessitated the requirement for a heritage impact assessment to be prepared. The proposal is for the construction of a 40-story mixed-use building on the site. A site plan application has not yet been submitted to the city, but we are bringing the heritage impact assessment forward to the committee this evening to receive input and comments on the heritage impact assessment, which staff will then consider as part of our review of the heritage impact assessment and the continued processing of the anticipated planning application. So with that said, a motion or recommendation to council is not required on this item this evening. We are simply seeking comments and feedback from the committee members on the heritage impact assessment. And I will turn it back over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Victoria. And then I believe we have Kanika Koshal, who has a 5-minute presentation for us on this item. So I'll invite them to provide their presentation. Also realized that I was supposed to let you all know that we are now live streaming our meeting, and I forgot because I'm still getting used to the Zoom world. I apologize, but it is streaming for you all today. And I believe Kanika is now on our panelist list. So Kanika, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kanika Kaushal, and I'm the Heritage Intern Architect at McCallum Sather Architects, and I'll be presenting the 10 Duke Street project for you all today. The 10 Duke Street project is located in downtown Kitchener. It's a colonial revival architectural style red brick building. We're basically looking at understanding and assessing the impacts that the proposed development, which is for a 40-story tower, which is proposed to be located above and adjacent to the existing heritage structure. So we would be looking at assessing the impacts and going through the mitigation and the conservation strategies that have been recommended or incorporated as a part of the proposal. Next slide, please. Thanks. The building itself, like I mentioned, it basically dates back to 1949. It was built somewhere around 1949, colonial revival in architectural style. It's a simple rectangular floor plan layout, which has 3 stories and a mechanical room on top, as you can see on the image on the right, in the aerial view image. Essentially, the building has a symmetrical facade, looking at the front and the rear, and then the side facades. The front and the rear facades have 11 bays, which is the north and south facade, and the east and west have 6 bays. The windows are double hung, and the front facade, which is along Duke Street West, has a central main entrance. Next slide, please. Giving a quick brief historical background to the building, it was the former Economical Mutual Fire Insurance Company building, and it was used as their office space between 1949 to 1989. It was also the oldest financial institution that served its citizens continuously for 83 years, the city of Kitchener, or back then Berlin. And it was designed by the known Toronto-based architects Mathers and Halby, who also designed the Queen's Park Complex in Toronto or the National Library and Archives, Ottawa. Next slide. In terms of the heritage attributes, like I said, we are looking at the building's rectangular plan with the red brick course pattern, Flemish bond with Flemish bond, the 11 bays and 6 bays along Duke and Queen respectively, the window openings with segmental arches and voussoirs, the 8x12 windows with limestone sills, the main entrance door, and the exquisite limestone band, which is present between the second and the third floors, along with the parapet roofline. As part of our condition assessment of the building, we also basically found that there were certain brass elements that are original to the building, which includes the stair railings, the newel post caps and wall grills, which have been now included as a part of a report as interior attributes that should be preserved and reused in the proposed development. Next slide, please. Overall, the building, per our condition assessment, is in a good condition, except for some, I would say, staining and efflorescence that was observed on the exterior facade at certain points. Other than all the other heritage attributes, and the building overall is intact and has good structural integrity. Next slide, please. As a part of the heritage documentation, we also went through the applicable planning policies, so both at provincial and municipal level. And as part of our research and assessment, the proposed development does conform to the policies, and the proposal also balances really well in terms of the design requirements as well as the planning policy requirements overall. And it also conforms to the conservation principles as laid out by the standard and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. Next slide, please. This is just to show the location of the subject site. It's part of the city center district within the urban growth center downtown. Next slide, please. And again, just to highlight the city center district now, which is the UGC 1, located at Duke and Queen. Next slide, please. As a part of the proposed development, specifically for the podium level, which will be the heritage, which is proposed to be the heritage building, the owners are proposing parking basically at the level 1, along with the existing lobby space and office spaces and retail spaces in the front. So when we are standing in front of the building, basically we won't be able to really see the parking, because it's proposed to be at the rear side of the layout. And the floors above will include, again, ramp and parking spaces for basically the proposed development. And overall, above that, we would have the stepped back new development, which would include the tower. As a part of the proposed development, the owner is proposing to retain the entire front facade and the entire facade along Queen Street. And the east facade, we would have, on the west facade, the 3 rear bays are proposed to be demolished along with the complete rear facade. And other than that, the front portion and the portion which is visible from Queen and Duke is retained completely, which helps conserve the character defining elements of the building overall. And there is a significant transition in height between the historic as well as the adjacent buildings through that podium design. Overall, there is very distinct design direction when it reads as a very legible design, which helps us distinguish between what's old and what's new. Next slide, please. So this is again the floor plan, level 1 plan, just to show the extent of what is being retained along Duke and along Queen, and with the proposed amenity spaces and lobby and parking spaces, which is basically at the rear side of the building. Next slide, please. So overall, in terms of our assessment, this proposal retains the on-site heritage resource and conserves all of its heritage attributes. And it would stand out as a landmark along with like a unique project that would be supporting residential intensification within downtown Kitchener. And as part of the mitigation strategies, because there is proposed demolition for some portion of the building, we have recommended detailed documentation, and also we propose to salvage and store any of the demolished any of the heritage attributes that are proposed to be demolished and potentially reused in the new construction. And the interior heritage attributes will also be incorporated within the new design. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Kanika. So as Victoria mentioned, this item does not require a motion. Staff are seeking feedback from the committee. So I will now turn this over to any questions or for Kanika or Victoria and comments from committee members.
Thanks. Yeah.
Peter.
Yes. Yes, I have a couple of questions. I think that the committee's seen this building before as part of a previous development proposal, and that I'm wondering whether, as I recall, there was a heritage impact assessment that went along with the previous proposal at the time. So I was wondering how long ago that was, and whether there's the recommendations of the previous assessment, if there's any correspondence to the recommendations in the current assessment.
I can take a stab at answering that question. I was not aware that the committee had reviewed a heritage impact assessment for development proposal on this site previously. So that is something that I'll have to look into and confirm as to when that took place. And then go back and see how this current heritage impact assessment relates to the previous one. So I can look into that and can follow up. Okay,
thank you. So another question, is designation part of the, or is the developer coming back and designating portions of this building part of this plan, or is this the appropriate spot for that?
Sorry, go ahead, Victoria.
I was just going to say, so we haven't received a formal planning application, as I indicated at the beginning. However, when planning staff reviews applications and the supporting materials for a development application, we develop conditions of approval, and designation could potentially be a condition of approval pending our review of all the information that's submitted.
That's part of that process.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Other questions or comments from committee members? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, I was just wondering how common it is for us for things like this to come to us prior to an official application being submitted.
So this application is a bit unique, given that it is only a site plan application that's coming forward. There are no other planning applications under the Planning Act that are proposed at this time. So no committee of adjustment or zoning bylaw amendment or official plan amendment application. And so in order for there to be sufficient time to review a development proposal. We do have instances where when it's just a site plan application that's being proposed, that the heritage impact assessment is submitted and reviewed as early as possible as part of that process.
So is this, maybe this is a question for Kanika, is this really, you're just trying to see if this whole thing is feasible, or, you know, maybe you could explain to us why you've submitted this at this stage?
I think when it comes to such exciting heritage buildings, and especially located within, downtown city fabric, where there will be residential intensification associated within these areas. So I think I would definitely say this is more for the clients who are the owners who are interested in moving forward with the proposed development, to understand what's the best way you can integrate an existing building with what they're proposing. I think that's also part of this entire assessment, not just for us, as heritage consultants, for us, it is, yes, we are assessing the impacts of the proposed development. But I think for the owners, when they move forward with something like that, they want to understand what is the best way we can use what is existing on site and integrate it with, in this case, like a condo tower, or it can be some other development. So getting that feedback from the city staff, from the committee members, I think it's extremely critical for them to understand in which, even if they are heading in the right direction or not. I think that's how I see it. But I think it's more for the owners to talk more, I guess, on this.
And have the owners considered preserving the existing building and building up and around it, rather than just doing this facadism thing that we've seen before?
It has been considered. It just keeping just the balance in terms of the planning policy requirements and the goals and the design program requirements. I think it was really hard to sort of keep all the facades as is and incorporate the parking and the core, the new core, and then connect it with that condo tower because of the limitations of the site in terms of the widths and the existing dimensions. But yes, that was considered. And this sort of integration where you have something above and adjacent to the site, to the existing heritage building, was considered to be the most balanced design approach.
I have one last question, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah. I was just wondering, you mentioned the brass hand railings. Are there any other interior attributes that we should be aware of?
Yes.
From our, sorry?
Yes.
Oh. Jean, I think you've got your
Hello.
your speaker on.
There we
Go
go. I
ahead.
think, Kanika, you can go ahead.
No, I was just saying that as part of our site visit, we did see the terrazzo flooring in the washrooms, and we had a trade person to look at it. It was just located there, and we do mention about it in our report, but due to reasons of the way it has been incorporated as a part of the flooring, it is extremely hard to take it out as is. And this is, again, as per the trade investigations that they did on site, And that is one of the reasons that as a part of the list, we have not been able to say that we will be able to retain it. But in terms of our salvage documentation requirements, we do say that in our HIA that this should be salvaged as much as possible and reused in the new development. But we haven't incorporated that as part of the interior listed heritage attributes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, this is actually a question for Victoria. Is this building being designated, or if it's not designated, it's on our listing of heritage buildings?
Yes, this building is currently listed on the city's municipal heritage register. And as I had indicated previously, as a condition of planning approvals, designation is something that that we would consider for this building.
And did I understand correctly? You said there are no other planning issues, that there are no zone changes required for this, or?
The application, the planning application required to facilitate this development is a site plan application.
What I was also interested in, when I was first looking at it, I thought the building is going to be saved, but now we're just really looking at a bit of the facade being saved. As how does our staff feel about that? Is it worth looking further to try to save the entire building? I was also I expected that the interior, that there were some special attributes in the interior, as well as some historical attributes. This is we're just dealing with the economical building on Queen Street, their original home. This was their second home, was it not?
Yeah, so so Heritage Planning staff are still reviewing the Heritage Impact Assessment, and will be reviewing an application once it is submitted. But an application hasn't come in at this time, so planning staff don't have fulsome comments or an opinion to provide at this point in time.
But we're given as a committee an opportunity to make some comments. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm seeking comments from the committee on the Heritage Impact Assessment, and those comments will be taken into consideration as part of staff's review.
Thank you.
Through to the chair. My apologies. Before we get into the second round of comments and questions, I just wanted to advise that Mr. Martin Aisling has joined the meeting by phone. And so I just wanted to give him an opportunity to chime in into the round. Mr. Aisling, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I should be unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. You should be able to participate as typical now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. Welcome, Martin. All right. I believe Peter had his hand up. Peter, did you still have a comment?
Yeah, I did. It was the heritage buildings of heritage interest list, and that because it's on the heritage registry, that we found that it has been vetted before, and in its vetting, it would have been had been a list of the historic attributes that were thought at the time were savable, right? So that list does exist in binders in an office somewhere, and it'd be interesting to compare that list to the application that's in front of us and see if all those same things are there.
Yeah, I can comment on that as well. So given that this property is currently listed on our municipal heritage register, there was a statement of significance that was prepared when the property was formally listed by council. And that statement of significance was provided to the heritage consultants for the preparation of the Heritage Impact Assessment. So that was provided as some background information as to the heritage interest of the property.
And I guess my question would be for Hanneke, that is there anything that is on that list of attributes in the assessment that is not addressed in the impact assessment in front of us?
No, we have addressed all of those. In fact, that list mentions only about the street-facing facades along Queen and Duke in terms of the exterior heritage attributes. We also incorporate, like we are also proposing to add the interior brass elements railing as part of the list now. And we are also supporting future designation.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
Sorry, Sam.
It's all right. Jean, do you have comments you would like to make?
I don't know why I'm cut out. Oh, I see it. Now I can start the video, eh? I don't know. I'll just talk.
We can hear
First
you,
of all,
Jean.
Okay, thank you. I'm very glad to see that the brass elements are picked up, the brass railings. It's very significant. I feel strongly that there should be every attempt in some way, and this is for staff to look at, these terrazzo floors, which are vanishing. I think of St. Jerome's, or now the School of Social Work, WLU, just down the street. And I went past there and I looked, and the wood that is in the foyer there has all been preserved. The floors have been preserved. And even some of the tin ceilings have been preserved. So it seems to me that we should have a better approach for saving these elements, a better look at it. But I have a question to the applicant. First of all, why are you limiting your, or why is your applicant that you represent, why is it limiting to 40 stories and not go 60 or 50 at center of town? Is there a reason why you're not going higher?
I'm sorry, is someone from the applicant team here, Mauricio? Not sure if they are.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone. on
Jennifer
oh,
and
there.
oh, there they are. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I just wasn't set up as panelist, but yes, of course, just to answer the question, there's some limited factors here, the main one being parking. And given the fact that we can go underground, given the groundwater on site, that's our limiting factor. And 40 stories is the more reasonable density that we can foresee for this project.
All right, I have another question. I don't know if everyone is aware that our landfill has 25 years left in it. And so as we demolish all of these buildings and all of this material, it goes to the landfill. Granted, you'll have to do tipping fees, but where is the demolished material going?
That is something that we will be working with our demolition trades. Just because of the stage of the process, we haven't engaged them. But we have been working in our projects such as Station Park, where we have identified proper locations where this debris can be disposed of. But that will come into a time where we're ready to start those conversations. Unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you today.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Jean. All right, any further questions or comments on this item? Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, no, I just want to follow up on one of Jean's questions, and maybe Mauricio, you can answer this. Where has the Station Park remains being taken?
So far, we're working on soil removal. So I believe it's Kids Weather, our contractor, that have identified proper regulated sites by the Ministry of Environment to be disposed of. I don't have the exact locations with me, but they're following all of the regulations set up by the ministry for this type of disposal.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilor Michaud, was that a hand or was I? No, okay. Just wanted to make sure I was not missing anything. All right. Well, seeing no further comments or questions, we will move on from this item. So Victoria, those are our comments for your report. And we will move on to our next draft heritage impact assessment. And before we get into this one, are there any conflicts? Ilona?
Yes, I have a conflict. My son works for House of Friendship.
Awesome, thank you, Ilona. So I believe Sarah will be putting you on hold for the duration of this item, just so that we can manage that conflict. And once that happens, I will invite Victoria to provide us with her opening remarks.
Great, thanks, Sam. So the Planning Division is in receipt of a draft heritage impact assessment to redevelop the properties municipally addressed as 47 to 75 Charles Street East and 40 to 50 Eby Street South. The properties that make up the subject lands are not designated or listed under the Ontario Heritage Act, but are located adjacent to a Part 4 designated property located at 90 Church Street. So this necessitated the requirement for a heritage impact assessment to be prepared and submitted as part of a complete planning application. In addition, a portion of 75 Charles Street East and all of 40, 42, and 50 Eby Street South are located within the boundary of the Cedar Hill neighborhood cultural heritage landscape. So the proposal is to facilitate the construction of a 9-story mixed-use building consisting of office space and recreational facilities, as well as 72 affordable housing units. The existing building at 40 to 42 Eby Street South is proposed to be demolished to accommodate vehicular access to this site. And the existing building at 75 Charles Street East is proposed to be retained. With respect to the building at 40 to 42 Eby Street South, I did want to provide the committee with some additional background information. So in a previous iteration of the Heritage Impact Assessment, it did conclude that property required some additional review given its location within the Cedar Hill neighborhood cultural heritage landscape. So planning staff did request some additional research be done on the 40 to 42 Eby Street South property. And that information has been appended to the Heritage Impact Assessment as Appendix J. And that property was on the former Heritage Kitchener inventory. And the property was reevaluated, I believe, between 2013 and 2014 as part of the Planning Division's work to populate the Municipal Heritage Register. The property was evaluated and reviewed by the evaluation subcommittee at that time. And the subcommittee identified that more information and research into that property was required. That additional research was conducted and it was brought back to the Heritage Kitchener committee at the time for review. And the committee did not recommend that council list the property. And so I did want to clarify to the committee at this time that the property does not currently have status under the Ontario Heritage Act. But as part of this Heritage Impact Assessment, some new information has been brought forward for consideration. As with the other heritage impact assessment that we just looked at, we are not looking for any sort of decision on these applications. No decisions are being made this evening. We are asking for feedback from the Heritage Kitchener members on the heritage impact assessment, and that comment and feedback will be taken into consideration as part of staff's continual review of the applications. And I'll turn it back over to you, Sam. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Victoria. And John Sertivan, I believe, is here to also provide a 5-minute presentation as the agent. So I will invite John to do that. I believe he just needs to be promoted. There we go. There he is. All right, John, I will turn it over to you for a 5-minute presentation.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. So my name is John. I'm an intern architect here at McCallum Sather. And as we just heard, I will be speaking to the Heritage Impact Assessment that was prepared for the property here on Charles Street. Are we able to share? Can I see that like big screen? I'm just seeing a big item 2 with my name on it there. Or maybe it's me.
Through the chair, John, you are able to change the layout of your screen.
Okay.
But I am sharing the presentation and am able to advance the slide.
Okay. That's perfect. So the first slide here, what you're looking at is the proposed 9-story development from the House of Friendship people. The proposal is for a affordable housing complex that is going to replace a number of properties there along Charles Street. And they're also proposing to demolish the property at 40 to 42 EB, which is part of a proposed cultural heritage landscape, pardon me, to the east of the site. So we can move to the next slide. So the subject site is at 47 to 75 Charles Street and 40 through 50 EB Street. There are 3 parcels of land, as you can see in the top right, comprising a total of 7 properties. There's 75 meters of frontage along Charles, which is actually proposed to be demolished. The proposal is also proposed to demolish the property at 40 to 42. With 50 EB Street to be retained. So 50 EB is a multi-unit residential, multi-story residential building, which will be retained in situ. The proposal is for a 9-story affordable housing residential complex on the subject site along Charles Street. So we can move to the next. So our site is actually located adjacent to the Urban Growth Center, which is downtown Kitchener. It is bound by Charles to the north and EB Street to the east. The LRT runs along Charles Street, which has direct transit access to downtown, which is only a few blocks to the west. The site is actually located within the Cedar Creek Heritage District, and it is located adjacent to the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District as well. So next slide, please. So our site is located within the Cedar Hills Secondary Plan boundary, which is on the map to the right. And it's also located within the proposed Cedar Hill Cultural Heritage Landscape. So the site itself is located adjacent to the Cultural Heritage Resource, which is at 90 Church Street, which I will show in the next slide. And it's also right across the street from the listed heritage resource at 33 EV Street. Other policy frameworks that it falls within. So we have the City of Kitchener Urban Design Manual, the City of Kitchener Official Plan, and also the Heritage Conservation Principles, through which we always use to facilitate any changes or reuses to heritage properties. We can go to the next slide. So here's the proposed cultural heritage resources map, and outlined in the light blue colored area is the proposed Cedar Hill and Suffolk Creek neighborhood landscape. So as you can see, the arrow there is pointing to the subject site, so it falls within that boundary. We can move on. So this map is sort of essentially showing the proposed cultural heritage landscape boundary and the attributes that have been identified by the city. So sort of in the top middle, there's a little red arrow. It's pointing to the EV Street streetscape there, right at the corner of Charles. And one of the heritage attributes that have been identified is the entrance view from Charles looking towards Church Street. So the development has proposed to demolish the property at 40 to 42, which sits along that viewscape. So we can go to the next slide. So the Cedar Hill heritage landscape sort of, there are a number of different attributes that have been identified through that cultural heritage landscape proposal. One is that the Cedar Hill neighborhood developed at a slower pace than other neighborhoods due to its higher topography. It's significant for its historical integrity, its variety of buildings, and its community value. This specific terminating vista toward 107 Church has been identified, as in the previous slide, within the CHL. So it is encouraged to be maintained. So the property at 40 to 42 does apply. The property in question is actually visible on the top left picture. It's actually the house that's clad in white stucco on the right side of the street. And adjacent to 90 Church Street, our building is adjacent to 90 Church, which is a designated heritage building. That's at the bottom left, and 33 EB, which is there on the bottom right. You can go to the next slide. So this is a fire insurance plan from 1908. On the bottom left, the arrow is pointing to the designated building at 90 Church Street. The arrow on the bottom right is showing the listed property at 33 EB Street. And the arrow sort of on the middle right is showing the property in question at 40 to 42 EB. So this was from 1908, and it's showing that our house has existed at least since then, but it was identified in the evaluation that it was actually constructed in 1884, which would make it one of the oldest properties on that street or vista. Can you go to the next slide? So the proposed development, it's a 9-story affordable housing facility. It has a 3-story podium and support services with recreational facilities. It has a 2-way ramp, exit entry along Charles, and then the proposed entry along EB Street. There are a total of 72 affordable dwelling units and 39 parking spaces. The podium provides a height transition between the adjacent buildings. The building itself maintains appropriate massing and scale. And the proposal is contemporary as per conservation principle number 7, which is legibility. So basically it references yet is distinguishable from its surrounding built context. So we can go next. So here is the proposal as it stands. So what is being proposed is that 40 to 42, which will be located just adjacent to property B, will become an access point to the underground parking garage. It should be noted that we do not support the removal of that property. The only benefit that is proposed is some 7 to 8 above ground parking spots and an access point. It does also retain some of the landscaping, but an additional access point along Charles Street, it would significantly reduce the size of the landscaping, but it would retain the heritage resource in situ. So we can move to the next slide. So as mentioned, our strategy is to retain and preserve the property. We'd also like to see, where possible, the incorporation of red or yellow brick into the design of the podium level to commemorate the design or the demolished buildings. And the use of salvage material from the demolished buildings would be great as used in the new design. We also recommend fencing or landscape buffer to be installed between the new development and the heritage building at 90 Church. The topographical character of both Evian Street, Charles Street are suggested to be retained. And the new development, we would like to see it maintain the pattern and building orientation, as well as general setbacks on Charles Street. We can move to the next one. Oh, I think that might be it. Sorry, it's the next slide.
Through the chair, that is the last slide.
Oh, that is the last slide. Okay, I thought there was a more. Okay. Well, thanks very much for your time. And we can take some questions.
Great, thank you. All right, I will turn it over to the committee. A reminder that, again, there's no motion required for this item. Staff are seeking our feedback. So if you have any questions or comments, please present them now. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, if nobody else wants to speak, I will. I guess what the most important part of this development for me is the building of affordable housing, and deeply affordable housing. So I you know, there could be some heritage questions that might arise, but I fully support what's being proposed here.
Great, thanks, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Michaud.
I'll weigh in here as well. I concur with Councillor Chapman. Yeah, we're sitting here in a heritage committee, and we're looking at some of these beautiful heritage buildings at a presentation where it's going to offer, you know, affordable homes to 72 people or families. I'm not sure what the background of it all is. So yeah, I don't know how you cannot support something like this. It's quite a huge endeavor, and I'm quite impressed.
Now I'm muted. Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Jean, I see your hand. I do just want to let Martin know that he's muted. So if he needs to unmute, get our attention, he will need to do that. Jean.
Thank you. I trust I'm unmuted. Okay. think it's probably a long time in coming to find a support for those who are in need of the housing, and more than just a temporary situation. However, I have to ask this question because the one building is relatively new, although maybe can't say it's heritage. It's to be demolished. And so I have to ask the applicant or the rep, what will you do with the demolished, with the demolition material? What is the plan for that? And then I have a further question about 47 Charles.
Thanks, Jean. John, I'm not sure if you're able to answer that question, but.
Sorry, no, I can't speak to that. That was never part of our discussion.
All right. Further then, 47 Charles, and I did a really thorough look at it on the weekend, and I do believe that it has some very outstanding features, and it is a quality building. And I wondered why there isn't an attempt to fit it in, or even to redo it, or make it part of the complex. Can the applicant answer?
John, are you able to speak to that question?
So I have our director, Drew Hauser here. Is he able to speak to that?
Yeah, I believe we can do that. Sarah, we'll just need Drew.
The chair, I'm promoting him now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
I'm in the same room.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
I tried to make it easy so we wouldn't have to go back and forth. So
perfect.
Thanks. I know when we looked and we did our initial review of all of the buildings, what became really apparent was the ones that were in the landscape, the cultural heritage landscape, were not the other houses. So we had a little less that we could look to or look towards for them. But the actual, the Eby Street project, or the Eby Street home, being from 1884, it became kind of that corner property framing the entry going into the area. So prior to us even knowing that this was being purchased by House of Friendship, we had identified this as an important building. There was some important families who had lived in it. I believe Henry Schneider had lived in it in 1920, I believe, when he was around 1912, he was around 22 when he lived there. So there was a lot of different pieces for that particular home. I am curious through the chair, if I may ask a question of the councillors that were supporting taking down that cultural asset. May I ask the question?
Sure.
I was wondering, did they support the project and keeping 4042 as we show in the suggested concept plan, or did they want to tear down that home and put up the parking spots? Oh my God, it sounds like a song from the 60s.
Great, thanks, John.
Break out in song.
I know, like we've turned into full Broadway here.
Councillors Michaud and Chapman, did you have comments on that?
I don't. I'm not. You know what? I don't have a comment on it. I'm sorry. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, no, do you know what year that was? Because I'm wondering if this predates us.
I think it might.
Yeah, the original, it's in the 1908 map, but it's around 1890s. The original home was built. So it's around 130 years old.
No, but I mean when it was brought to council before.
Or do you mean just when we made our comments just now?
I'm talking about when the comments that were made just now said, we support this project.
Oh.
And the project as it is going forward from the client, they want to tear the house down and put in a parking lot. And they have shown us alternates where they've kept the house and incorporated it into the larger, their larger development. I'm just trying to understand which you support. What we support from our heritage review, or what has been submitted.
I don't know the details well enough, but I mean, for
Yeah.
me, if that house could be preserved, I would say, let's do it.
And I think, and I'll just add to Councillor Chapman's, I would as well, but I suspect it would be costly to do that, more cost for the client. Am I right?
Well, again, in a heritage meeting, we don't talk about
Oh,
the cost
okay.
of keeping a cultural asset, but
Right, yeah.
actually the house is in great shape, both inside and out, as per the inspections that were done by the city and by our team and by the client. They were surprised at its condition, and it shows two different time periods quite significantly, and it's a very handsome facility. And it's a house. So I'm sure the House of Friendship, whom as a child, our family supported, and I don't live in Kitchener anymore, but I absolutely support what they do and couldn't be more supportive of that. But also, you know, because you're doing affordable housing doesn't give you a license to take down heritage buildings. So I think that cost is justified, and it's part of what makes it's important to the city of Kitchener and to its inhabitants and community. So just as important as those people having a home, is important to trying to maintain and create a vibrant culture.
I'm going to reserve my comment until I look into this a little more closely. I don't feel I have enough. Yeah, I just need a little more time with that one. Thanks.
Councillor Michaud. All right, I'm seeing a number of hands, and Jean, I know you also have some questions still.
Just one more.
Okay. I just want to make sure, Peter and Councillor Chapman, do you have questions that are directly relevant to the conversation we were just having? Okay. So Jean, if it's all right with you, I just want to make sure we sort of keep to the same subject, and then we'll come back to you. I won't forget you.
Okay.
Peter.
Thanks. I didn't understand that there was a choice between the two alternatives. I thought that the second alternative was the preferred one, with the retention of the second building on EB Street. So I would just like to say, if this question of support for one of the two, I would vote for retaining the second building strongly.
Great, thanks, Peter. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, my question would be, if we were to retain that building, how would it impact the number of affordable units in the whole build?
It would actually give more units because there'd be more space. It doesn't impact the building where the units are at all. It only has impact to some parking or parking access. And if you go back to the imagery there's the image that is being shown where it's torn out. And then there's a smaller image that they show of our preferred option that was created.
And is your preferred option the retention of that building?
Absolutely. It's an important building to this neighborhood, and it's an important building to all of Kitchener. It's one of the first homesteads in the entire, when Berlin was founded, it's one of the very first homesteads.
Well, then I would say if you know, if it's not going to reduce the number of affordable housing units, then I would definitely support that option.
Great, thanks, Councillor Chapman. All right, Jean, back to you.
So I think this is commendable that we are looking at housing rather than a parking lot, which doesn't support housing. And it's right there on the LRT, so it's handy. But My question, the property that I was thinking of that really hit me is 47 Charles. And it has spectacular, like the off-white brick or that yellowy white brick. It has stained glass windows in it, and it has remarkable wood brackets under the eaves where I believe there's a bay window or in the top, like the top triangular piece. And if that can't be saved, is there some way to recover or salvage all those spectacular materials? The off-white brick is, I will say, because I'm looking for it, it's a very difficult one to come by in as good a shape as it is. And also, as I say, the stained glass windows are interesting. I don't know what's inside it, if there are any left, but you can see them from and the brackets that are up under the eaves, the wood brackets. So I don't know whether the architect can make any comment. It's 47 Charles, the one property that is right on the corner. I don't know if that's a street coming down to Charles or what, but anyway, it's beside a roadway. Can the architect talk about that?
Through the chair, may I answer? Thank you. Thank you, Jean, for that. I totally appreciate what you're bringing forward and suggesting. I would suggest that out of this meeting, that could be a recommendation that is shared going forward. I do believe that in general, the team that is working on this would use demolition or salvage companies that would try and continue to salvage anything. And it is recommended in our HIA to salvage any of those items. So that is something we're recommending, and they would pick a demolition contractor that would be sympathetic to that going forward.
Right. If I may, just to conclude, perhaps there's some way in the new building that some of these features can be incorporated or reused in some way. It could be an interesting thought and way of adapting it.
Agreed.
Thanks, Jane. All right, Councillor Gazzola, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, are either 42 or 47, are either of them on our heritage listing?
Through the chair, 42 EB Street and 47 Charles Street East are not currently listed or designated under the Ontario Heritage Act.
Okay. Now, having said that, I'm pleased to see that we're have an opportunity here to save 47 that it seems to have a lot of attributes worth saving, and it's unusual. Usually we're having to fight to save a building. So if this can be saved and the rest can carry on, I can totally support saving 42. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. John Neufeld, I see that you have your hand up. Are you responding to a question or comment from the committee?
Yeah, I just want to comment on a few things, and I feel like we're not getting full representation here on the project. So I just wanted to maybe correct a few things that have been said in regards to this, because no one's spoken on behalf of House of Friendship here. There's a lot of people speaking for it. No one's actually speaking from House of Friendship. So if I could just make a few comments in response. First of all, we did look at all sorts of alternatives to try to preserve this home. We worked very closely with Walter Fady, looked at multiple options. I'm assuming, like, we presented, we gave the committee a 2-page kind of response to the report. I don't know if that was read or reviewed, because there's a lot of actually in the MSA report, there's a lot of things that were supportive of us with the proposal of not keeping the property. The problem with what's proposed by MSA is it would essentially wipe out the whole green, a good chunk of the green space. And this is a huge part of this project. This isn't just about 72 units of housing. This is about creating a community hub for the folks. This isn't just for people in that house. You got to remember there's 64 people living in supportive housing at Eby. There's another 22 at Charles. So this building is actually serving all three. So we're going to have over 150 people living in supportive housing, and there's no outdoor space for them. Based on the presentation or what MSA is recommending, it cuts it in complete half. So I think if you actually reference, I think we gave you a courtyard landscape concept. We've been working closely with our Indigenous community to look at how to make that courtyard not just a great space for the folks there, but for our Indigenous members. So I don't know if people have seen, we submitted those drawings for you. You know, the Indigenous medicine wheel is embedded in the ground in the southwest part of the courtyard. In the middle of the courtyard is an icon of the turtle. So we would lose a large part of that. And then we would be forced as a not-for-profit to hang on to a house that has not been worked on for over 50 years. It is complete misrepresentation to say that any of our staff from our organization feel the building is in good condition. If anyone has walked through that building, you would be aghast yourself, and I'll gladly take you for a tour anytime. And I've spoken to the former owner who said, he himself says, please, you need to tear this house down, because he himself has not done any work to the house for decades. So for us to be burdened with trying to take care of that, we would lose a lot of green space for the community. It's not just, we're not just demolishing it, turning into parking. I think that's a misrepresentation of that. If you look at the drawings, you'll see that we'll be losing out on a significant amount. So we'll be making a huge sacrifice for that community right there for 150 that will not benefit from a home that's falling apart, and one we won't be able to afford to maintain. So I think I want to take into consideration some of those things for you to consider. And I think we've given a fairly detailed 2-page report with lots of drawings outlining that. So I just want to balance it out to say that that is not, our recommendation is not in line with what MSA has recommended for those reasons.
Great, thank you very much for your comments. I will confirm for you that the 2-page notes that you had made were distributed to the committee, so we have seen those. All right, I'm seeing a lot of hands, and I believe Martin is also wanting to speak, which is what the interference noise is there. So I have John, Councillor Gazzola, and Martin who all want to speak. Martin, do you want to speak? Now Martin is muted.
Thank you, Sam. Is Councillor Gazzola going first, or should I speak now?
Martin, why don't you go ahead, because it sounds like you have connection issues, so we'll try and get you in while we can.
Okay, thank you very much. And I don't believe this is a conflict in any way, but just for the sake of kind of full disclosure, regardless, I used to work at House of Friendship, and that was about 5 years ago. Since I was last there, I don't have any current connection to House of Friendship. I'm also a resident of Cedar Hill, and I just want to say I appreciate John Neufield's comments, particularly because it's, you know, speaking for someone that's not, you know, myself, say an architect. I know that some people have a lot more specific subject matter expertise when it comes to that, but from my perspective, I think it, you know, given the constraints of trying to kind of sort things out in a meeting, although we, of course, we have things. I'm just trying to say that it's very easy to perhaps be a bit too heavily, we're thinking of things that will affect the cost and feasibility for someone that's building something. And clearly, as has been noted, that's particularly important when it comes to deeply affordable housing. So I thank you very much for your comments, John, and for clarifying that piece about the green space and the cost of maintaining that building. I think that, and just to respond to kind of another comment about, you know, what the role of our comment should be here. One of the reasons why we're forming a subcommittee on the effects of heritage designations on affordability is that I think that it's important to recognize that there are always going to be trade-offs to be made, and I would, and I think it's very important to consider, you know, the impacts of our decisions on affordability, because you know, housing affordability is very important, of course, but also there are a number of ways that our decisions could affect the affordability or feasibility of affordable housing. And I think John's comments gives us a bit more context to look at that. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Martin. All right. John Sturdivant, are you responding to a comment or question from committee? I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, sorry about that. I couldn't get my volume back on. And this is Drew, actually. John's sitting beside me, but that's all right, Sam. We're just playing musical chairs here. I guess, yes, what is important is that in option 3, which was put forward by Walter Fady and the client group, it does show a full courtyard and the house conservation as well as a driveway, and they get everything. The community gets a heritage building, and the cost I think that's really worth looking at. It isn't part of the slideshow. It was not included, but I think that option 3 is really important. We do show how it fits and how it can be suited. And yes, there is a cost to keeping a heritage building in a heritage home, but in the context of how it's very difficult to balance a whole project such as this. I mean, we're taking down 5 or 6 homes on Charles, some of them quite handsome, but not within the conservation landscape. And this one, which is one of the oldest homesteads in Kitchener, is what we strongly support. And an option that is successful for all parties has been demonstrated, even though it may be slightly more difficult. But I think some of those challenges will actually make the overall project richer. And I leave it at that. I think our opinion is really clear, and we trust the members of the Heritage Committee and the Heritage Planners at the City of Kitchener to, if they have more questions or need more assistance, we're here.
Great, thank you, Drew. Sarah, I just want to make sure that you have managed to follow the switching of chairs with John and Drew for the minutes.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah. You're amazing. Councillor Gazzola, I have you next.
Yeah, I want to thank John Neufeld for his comments. Hearing his comments, I can really appreciate where they're coming from. And after all, Mr. Neufeld is, I think, representing the people that are going to be involved with this whole project. Because, John, what you've pointed out is an issue that we're going to be facing in downtown Kitchener in the next few years, and that we have all of these big new high-rise buildings going up and thousands of people coming into our downtown center, and very little green space for them to enjoy. And so the point that you've made, I think, is very valid. And the fact that the buildings are not on our listings and have not been designated, I can fully appreciate where you're coming from. And I don't want to say I'm flip-flopping, but there are two or more sides to every story, and when you hear all the sides, you have a different perspective. So I thank you for your comments, and I can appreciate where you're coming from. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola and Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I too, John, thank you so much for bringing your perspective to the table. I fully support what your analysis and your understanding of the use of that property. And so I feel like I'm backtracking as well, given the information we were just provided. But I appreciate the importance of community, creating that space, creating the space for people to develop and feel they've got that place, that they call their home. And so whatever it takes to make that, to create that environment, I think is what's very important. And I don't think it's a matter of affordability, because regardless, the affordability piece is there. And I have great respect for the work that you do. So.
Great, thank you, Councillor Chapman, sorry, and Robin.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Sam. I just want to add a comment in hearing both Johns and Drew speak as regards to this project. I think so for folks who don't know, and we'll be getting to this later today, part of the Heritage Committee's work this year is we have struck a Decolonize Heritage subcommittee, of which I am leading. And I would be remiss then to say that I think it's important when we're having these conversations, we think about whose heritage we're preserving here. And the idea that somehow a house that was an original homestead is more important than existing relationships with Indigenous communities whose heritage was erased through our processes here. It's just really important that we recognize and are thinking about that. And I think that the House of Friendship, through John's presentation, has shown that those considerations have been in place through this new project as well. So I think it's important to consider the different ways that heritage is expressed through this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? All right, seeing none, Victoria, I believe you have lots of comments on this for you to work with as you move toward preparing the staff report. So we'll move on then to our third draft heritage impact assessment. And Victoria, I will pass it over to you for our brief overview, and we'll also invite Ilona back now that we've moved on from that item.
Through the chair, she is rejoining the meeting.
Perfect, thank you so much, Sarah. All right, now that we've moved the correct people in and out of the virtual room, Victoria.
Great, thank you, Sam. So the Planning Division has received a draft heritage impact assessment regarding the proposed demolition of the property municipally addressed as 178 Queen Street South. This property is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and is located within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. This heritage impact assessment is being brought to the committee for review and comment. Again, we are not seeking a decision or a recommendation from the committee on this item this evening. This is just to receive comment on the heritage impact assessment that's been prepared. A heritage permit application is required to demolish designated property, and an application has been submitted to the city and is currently under review. And it's anticipated that the heritage permit application dealing with the demolition of the building will come before the committee at its next meeting. So again, just seeking feedback on the heritage impact assessment that's been submitted this evening. Thanks, Sam.
Great, thanks, Victoria. And I believe Vanessa Hicks is here to provide a 5-minute presentation on this heritage impact assessment. So we will invite Vanessa to our room. Excellent. So Vanessa, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So I'm just going to give a quick presentation. I see some familiar faces and some that are new. If you don't know who I am, my name is Vanessa Hicks. I'm a heritage planner with MHBC, and we were retained by the owner of the property to complete the heritage impact assessment, for which I'll be giving you a summary. I'm joined here today by the property owner, Zach Sayre. So I'm happy to answer any questions after my presentation about the heritage impact assessment that we've completed, but Zach Sayre might be best to have questions about the property in general. So both of us are here to answer your questions tonight. Next slide, please. Thank you. Just going to start a timer here so I know how long I'm talking for. It's a new trick I've learned. So I'll be talking about the proposed development in general. And in order to give you a background about this property and the sort of policies that apply to this area, I'll be giving you a summary of the policies that apply to the Queen Street South Quarter of the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. And I'll be giving you a summary of the findings of our heritage impact assessment and our conclusions. Next slide, please. So the proposed development is demolition, and the demolition is being brought forward to you because of the condition of the building. There's an outstanding bylaw order due to its general safety and condition, which was issued by the City of Kitchener last February 2021, and shortly after in March 2021, Zach Sayre, the owner of the property, currently purchased the property a month after that order was issued. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just demonstrating where within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District the building is located, and the dotted line denotes the location of the Queen Street streetscape within that area. Next slide, please. And this is just a shot of the property. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just to frame the policies that sort of apply to this property, which is really important to frame how this property and how demolition is treated by the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. The property is zoned MU2 within a special policy area, which allows for higher density than that of the interior of the district, which is residential in nature. So it's just important to note that there's specific policies that apply to the Queen Street area, and that also is captured within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. Such a mouthful to keep saying over and over again. Next slide, please. And I'll just take you through a few property photos of the property from the exterior. Next slide, please. And these were taken just this summer. Shows you the context a bit of where the property is located. Next slide, please. This is looking straight across the street from the front facade of the building. Next slide, please. And just so this one is the last one. The building's located at the intersection of Joseph Street and Queen Street South. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's where we start to provide that framework of policy within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. because essentially we're trying to ask ourselves what the Victoria Park area HCD plan says about demolition. And ultimately, it's the same as any, just about any heritage conservation district, which is that there's a presumption against demolition that usually goes without saying. But also the Queen Street South corridor has a different, or at least a different subset of policies that apply to this area. So this particular area is, as I said, designated and recognized in the plan, the Heritage Conservation District Plan, as being intended in the official plan and zoning for intensification through increased building density. And that is anticipated in the plan. And it includes policies that, to ensure the historic character of the corridor is conserved and enhanced, they recommend innovative design approaches to counterbalance the permitted high density and land use designation. Next slide, please. So given that in the Queen Street South corridor, zoning permits and encourages new high-rise and high-density development, major new building may be expected. So this is a quote from the Heritage Conservation District Plan. This plan recognizes and supports the rights and privileges of the property owners to redevelop in compliance with the municipal plan. Next slide, please. So the exception to policies, it gets different from the residential interior of the district, is that along Queen Street South, there are a number of fine historic residences that were demolished for new development, which did not materialize. The empty sites diminish the stature and integrity of the remaining streetscape. The intent of the plan is discourage demolition in the residential areas. So again, this is policies identifying that the Queen Street South corridor is acknowledged as being intended for different kinds of development, especially when the municipal plan acknowledges that there is intent for higher density here. And also in the Queen Street South corridor, demolition is acknowledged as a possibility where zoning permits significantly higher densities than presently exists. Next slide, please. So that was a summary of the policy direction from the Victoria Park HCD plan. Our heritage impact assessment determines that the property has modest design physical value for the Edwardian style building that was constructed in 1908. The property has some historical associative value for Christian S. Mewson, who was a contractor, as well as the Ratsbechtel Funeral Home and the Grund Funeral Home. So the building was a residence until about 1928 when it was converted into a funeral home. And the funeral home business continued there, I believe, until well into the mid to late 20th century. And it supports the character of the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District. So that's a summary of our evaluation for the property. Next slide, please. We also consider heritage integrity when we're considering the design physical value and whether or not a building is ultimately a good candidate for long-term conservation. And what the Ontario Heritage Toolkit identifies, that integrity is a question of whether or not the original building fabric remains. And the stronger the integrity of a building, the stronger the argument for long-term conservation. And we found a illustration of the building when it was recently converted to a funeral home. And you can see, based on the illustration and the recent photograph, that a lot of these original attributes of the building have been altered or removed. Next slide, please. So our conclusions are that demolition may be considered given its relatively modest cultural heritage value beyond its location within the Victoria Park HCD, and also with its overall integrity, which has unfortunately been compromised. Also, the building the building has been acknowledged as having value, but is not considered a good candidate for long-term conservation. Also, that the Victoria Park plan acknowledges that there are some cases, especially on Queen Street South, where demolition can be considered. The Victoria Park plan recognizes that where some buildings cannot be conserved, that careful salvage of key historic building fabric shall be undertaken, usually so it's not deposited as landfill, and so that it can be used in the restoration of similar style buildings, used as commemoration purposes, things of that nature. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, when I conducted my site visit this summer, the building has been gutted, and the condition of the building and the reason for which the building has been issued a bylaw order for its condition is that its condition is quite poor, to say the least, to the extent where the damage throughout the building is such that there's, in my opinion, no materials that would be good candidates for salvage. Unfortunately, there just isn't any in this case. Next slide, please. Yeah, there's prior to the owner's purchase of the building in last March, there was a hole in the roof, a large hole in the roof, and I don't know how long that hole had been there, but it had already done its damage. The water damage throughout the building is quite widespread. These photos, it's the same throughout every area of the house. It's not just localized, it's throughout the entire house. Next slide, please. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, as well as Zach, the owner of the property, who's also here.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. Sarah, just before we move to questions and comments, it looks like Peter is not in our panelist group, and I just want to make sure that he has an opportunity to speak. All right, so as Victoria mentioned, this is again another heritage impact assessment, which means that we do not need a motion, and staff is looking for feedback. So questions and comments once again. Councillor Chapman. You are still muted. No worries.
Oh, I said such important things. No, okay. So I just wanted to say that I understand on December 22nd, 2020, there's a property standards order issued for this property related to chimney repair, broken windows, and deteriorating walls. And work was supposed to be completed on February 5th, 2021. So I'm just wondering why that wasn't done when the property changed hands. Because if I'm not mistaken, it was right around the same time.
So I can answer that question. If I can turn on my camera. So we, when we purchased this property, we obviously discovered lots of issues that were outside of our knowledge prior to purchasing. Not only items related to the condition of the building, but back taxes that were due to the city of Kitchener for long periods of time. So when we acquired the building, our property management team, quickly moved to secure the building, look to sort of fix things that were reasonably doable to ensure public safety. All back taxes were paid directly at the point of sale to the city to remove that. And then subsequent to that, we actually worked with the bylaw department to understand what the, really understand the condition of the building. We brought through one of our heritage structural engineers to assess the building, and subsequently worked with the bylaw department to extend that order to give us time to work through this process with this committee and ultimately with the city of Kitchener to deal with some of the outstanding issues that still need to be rectified.
So, but you're not really answering my question. So what happened to the windows and the doors? They all look boarded up now.
So the building was made safe so that people, couldn't get into the building, and that was in line with what the bylaw department was happy with to get us to a point of building safety. And then we've now got a new order that's on the property for 1 calendar year that we can work through this process and with our intention of ultimately demolishing the building.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I was aware of the fact that there were these back taxes, and I think that the previous owner actually lived in the house. So I'm a bit astonished to see the photos that were just presented to us, but because it was a lived-in house at that time. Anyway, thank you.
Yes, I wasn't aware that they were living in there, but we did find out upon closing of the back taxes, it looked to rectify that right away.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Other comments or questions from committee? Councillor Gazzola, and Jean, I see your hand for next as well.
I just wanted to ask Vanessa if the building had been kept in good repair, would her opinion of it be any different? Were there, if it had been kept in its pure repair, would there have been enough attributes to have it designated or listed?
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, we consider heritage integrity as separate from condition. A building can be in excellent condition, but have very poor heritage integrity. In turn, a building can have excellent integrity and be in very poor condition. In fact, we see these often. So if you ask me whether or not the building was kept in good condition and still had poor integrity, I would say no. I would still be recognizing that the properties in the Victoria Park Heritage Conservation District, but did still have relatively low or modest design value because the integrity is such that the original fabric had been removed. The building is not considered rare, early, or unique in terms of what can be found in Victoria Park or the city of Kitchener. So regardless of its condition, which is generally not regarded as a criteria when evaluating properties, if it was still in excellent condition, it would still have modest value.
Thank you for your answer. That's actually what I wanted to hear. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Jean. Jean, you're muted.
Unmute.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Thank you, Sam. I'm thinking that this is a question for the owner. As the consultant, Vanessa, has mentioned that the building is in such a state, it's beyond any ability to recover any materials of any value, to salvage them. So, and it's slated for demolition, but I have to ask you, what are you going to do with the demolished material?
Thanks for the question. I suspected that was coming based on participating in the previous two presentations. So ultimately, obviously the condition of the interior building components are in very rough shape, probably contaminated to some capacity. So that would probably go to a landfill of some sort. I don't know directly where, but ultimately could find that out. I think in terms of the exterior brick and materials like that, the companies that we would work with would obviously sort that material. And in some cases, they might look to keep it for themselves to redeploy elsewhere. So generally, we work with local companies that would do this demolition, and I think they would look to recycle where possible. Anything that's contaminated with either decay or asbestos or items like that would need to be disposed of differently. But ultimately, we would try to sort of recycle and preserve as much as possible and see what we could keep or be redeployed elsewhere.
Just a question. Do you have any idea how many tons of demolition material this might produce?
That's a really good question. I would be lying if I gave you some answer, so I can certainly endeavor with a Sittler Demolition or a Keyswetter to find that out. But whatever I told you would be a lie, and I don't want to do that. Right.
And so I'm sure you can appreciate that our landfill has only 25 years left. And nobody wants, well, I can't say it's limited in space as we're looking at housing for people. You know, it's a crisis. So I'm sure you will consider what we can do about what is going down.
Certainly.
Thanks, Jean. Other questions or comments? All right, I actually have one comment on this one, which is about the proposed purpose post demolition, because I think at this point the building is beyond saving. I think the photos that Vanessa shared indicate that. But my concern is around the inducing demand for parking in this particular part of Kitchener. And we have often seen proposals come before our committee that rely on fairly large amounts of parking as part of the proposal, and this ultimately has impacts on the heritage around, like the heritage buildings and the landscapes around the properties. And so I have some concerns about creating a parking lot in this area that will make it very difficult to remove those spaces later and potentially have impacts on the demand for parking in this particular area of the city. So I wanted to note that. All right, I just want to double check to make sure that there are no further questions or comments on this one. All right, seeing none. Jean, did you have a comment?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. I just wanted to make.
I agree with your point. And my other question is, should we really be demolishing when we, you know, it looks beyond repair. However, maybe the front end, something could be done and housing could be created from it. But anyway, I appreciate your point. Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. All right, well, that looks like it concludes our discussion of this Heritage Impact Assessment. So Victoria, hopefully you have lots for your report. It feels like you're going to be doing a lot of report writing this month. So that will be good.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Vanessa and Zach.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next item, which is our subcommittee updates. So for this, Victoria is here to answer any questions or respond to any concerns that come up from our subcommittee updates. Because Shannon is new to our committee, I'll just provide a real quick overview of what is going on with the subcommittees, and then I will turn it over to our subcommittee leads who will try to stick to their 3-minute updates about what is going on in their committees, their subcommittees. I will also remind our subcommittee leads, if you can just introduce your name, the subcommittee, obviously, and a little bit about what the subcommittee is doing, just so that Shannon can catch up. And then as well, as per my email, if you can update us on who is attending meetings for your subcommittee and on your current project or projects. All right, so Shannon, we have developed subcommittees to expand the scope of the work that we are doing. So those subcommittees are meeting outside of our regular Heritage Committee and are working on various projects that they will update us on. And that's about it. Sorry, it's almost 6 o'clock on a Tuesday and it feels like a Friday already. So let's do our subcommittee updates. Robin, you're, for whatever reason, at the top of my screen, so I'll invite you to go first.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, Shannon. My name's Robin. My pronouns are she, her. And the subcommittee that I am the lead of is the Decolonizing Heritage Subcommittee. We've met twice so far and have plans to meet again next week. And that committee consists of myself, Victoria, Martin, and Jordan, but Jordan has been busy because he works for the museum prepping for the Unzip stuff. So really November was very busy for the committee. I'm a fundraiser. My brain is also gone. But we did meet on November 18th, Victoria and I, to basically gather our resources. So our first, when we were talking last time, our first sort of project that we're working on is putting together a list of current best practices in decolonizing heritage. So essentially, what are other communities doing? Mostly focusing on Ontario, but we did find in some of our searching some cool guides for municipalities in BC and Alberta that we're looking through in terms of what are our places across Canada doing to respond to the TRC's call to action and the MMIW, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's report in terms of what they want to see with heritage. And so that's where we're at. We've gathered our resources and we've got a couple things that essentially committee members are going through on their own time. And then we're planning on meeting to discuss our next steps from there. And the one thing I will highlight for folks is we found the Community Heritage of Ontario website, of which we are members because all heritage committees in Ontario are members. Has a really great video on their homepage from their last meeting or like a talk they had on moving forward with decolonization and inclusivity in the heritage field. So that's something that it's about 40 minutes. We're all planning on watching and discussing and kind of going from there. So we have been able to find some good stuff at both the Ontario and then Canada-wide level. And then essentially in the new year, we're hoping to put together that list of best practices and then review the City of Kitchener's plan and also the Heritage Act through the City Council. That is it. My brain is also dead. I'm very tired. I've been asking for money for mental health all month.
Thanks, Robin. I won't mention then that it's only the 7th of the month.
It's fine. The last grant is due tomorrow.
Good luck with that. All right. Thanks, Robin, for that update. Are there any questions or comments for the Decolonizing Heritage Subcommittee from the rest of our committee members? All right, great. Peter, I'll pass it to you next.
Hi, thanks. I'm Peter, and this is part of the designation subcommittee. And on the committee is Councillor Chapman, Sam, Donnie, Martin, and Ilona. And we're managing to meet once a month, and we'll hopefully arrange for that again. So we had a meeting this month, and Victoria was kind enough to attend. And the sort of first thing that we tried to focus on was to Victoria to help us to get a better handle on understanding the overview of what's involved in the designation process. And I think that if I kind of put it encapsulize the conversation, is that it's sort of happens in three parts. The first part, it involves the owner. So basically anyone can initiate the process. An individual can do it, a committee can do it. And initiating the process of designation demands that the owner of the property is informed of the process. So then they have the ability to object to their property being designated. So that's kind of the first gate that the designation process has to get through. The second gate is that the designation request would then go to staff, right? And I guess there would have to be an evaluation, and then if it was positive, then staff would have to do work in order to come up with a statement of significance. And that then would identify all of the attributes of the property and why it should be designated. So that's the second gate, right? And I think it's also one that's affected by resources, right? And whether the amount of work that a statement of significance requires can be handled by the current staff. It's kind of an open question. We really don't know. So that's the kind of the second gate. The third one is then if it passes those two, it then becomes into the political process. Right? So first it comes to the Heritage Committee, and hopefully there would be a recommendation for designation. Then it would go to council, and council would then have to have a majority vote in order for it to be designated. So that's the sort of third gate that you have to get through. So it can kind of, it can be disrupted at the beginning of the process with not cooperation of the owner. It can be potentially disrupted going through the staff review process. And then to get through the final process, there has to be political will as well. And that's a lot to line up. So we looked at, we sort of took several different scenarios through that process, whether it was ownership of an individual building. We discussed whether it was possible to bring forward something to designate something on the scale of a street. And the response was what's in place really only has designation for individual buildings or for neighborhood districts. And there's not really a scale in between. So it seems to be either one or the other. We then talked about the designation in relationship to the development process. And we're curious about the number of developments that are underway now that have designation of a building in the future as part of their requirements, right? And we just wanted to get a sense of a scale, right? Is it, you know, is it 3? Is it 10? It seems to be, it's a significant path of designation for a lot of properties are on, and we're hoping to get a better handle on just what, how many and what those are. Finally, we talked about the Municipal Heritage Registry and where it is and where all of that information resides. So that list of every building in Kitchener that supposedly has enough heritage attributes that it gets to go on the Heritage Registry. And we found that so if you go on the website and you can check and see whether an address is listed on the registry, but that's all the information that you can find out about it. The rest of the information about it, how it got on the list, the 4-step criteria that was used to evaluate it, the list of items that are of interest that got it on there originally. This is all contained in a set of binders at City Hall. So all of that information is there, except that it is all analog. Right? So that is could potentially be a bit of a hurdle, and could be information that could be more widely distributed. And I think that's probably an area that we're going to talk about further as a committee. And the sort of final question with the Heritage Registry was, can it be amended? And I think we got the sense that yes, that potentially we could bring buildings forward again, submit them to the same criteria that buildings got on the original registry for, and then amend the registry to put properties on it. And so that's another item that I think we may pursue. That's my whole list.
Great, thanks, Peter. That was very thorough. Are there questions or comments for the designations and the municipal register subcommittee? All right, seeing none, we will move on to Martin. Martin, are you able to provide us with an update on the housing designations and housing affordability subcommittee? Hoping Martin's not talking because he is muted currently.
Thank you. Okay, so I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you now.
I would just have a very brief update. There are small some research myself, Jordan, yourself as well, Sam. So our last month, I think, get as much progress on the research as we would have liked, although we did kind of get a start looking at some of the articles more in depth. I think the more exciting news is that, you know, kind of to add on to what Jordan shared last Wilfrid Laurier University Economics Department. There's also potentially some there of collaboration yet of what that might look like. I reached out to a former professor who kind of suggested some people in the faculty that might be interested, and maybe the potential of students as well. And there was one was if, depending on how formed that collaboration might be, and I mean, like to what extent actually be helping, is it just kind of talking things over every now and then to have someone that has.
Martin, sorry to interrupt.
You're having trouble hearing me?
Yeah, you're breaking up quite badly. Would it be all right if I gave a quick summary, because I am on the emails and I'm aware of what is happening with the subcommittee?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. And then if I've missed anything, you can try and chime in.
Yes,
So Martin is the lead for the subcommittee looking at the effective designation on housing affordability. And Martin and Jordan are the two primary members on that subcommittee. Also joined them for a number of meetings. Over the last month, they've been working on research further to the project, looking at some of the best practices in terms of designation and housing affordability, and looking at what others are doing to put together a bit of a report on that. And over the course of the last month, they've reached out to contacts at both University of Waterloo as well as Wilfrid Laurier for potential collaborations with folks who might be able to provide some additional information related to the economics of housing affordability, as well as some of the information for research purposes related to heritage designation for that. And so I think the next steps, and Martin, you can correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, would be to look at the possibilities of moving forward with some more formalized collaboration with some of those folks from the universities to continue the work for those reports. Does that summarize it?
Yes, and I would add, perhaps we can kind of later with Victoria, as you had asked, as you had kind of suggested that maybe we should just check and see if there are some unforeseen foreseeing complications of, say, a more formal relationship or what we would need to do to make that work. I forwarded that email to Victoria, and we can kind of follow up on that. But yeah, those are the next steps, along with just kind of continuing, putting together kind of an annotated bibliography that will, in the future, kind of turn more into a more kind of critical analysis literature review.
Perfect. Thanks, Martin. All right, so that is the update for the Affordable Housing and Designation Subcommittee. Apologize, designations is in, I think, all of our subcommittee titles, and I have to try and remember what the order of all of these are. Are there any questions or comments on that update that hopefully I or Martin might be able to answer? Victoria, staff Victoria is aware that we'll be reaching out to you regarding some more information. Perfect. All right, seeing none, I'll pass it on to Jean for our last update. And you are unmuted already, Jean, so you're good to go.
Thank you, Sam. So Heritage Promotion Subcommittee consists of Councillor Michaud, Ilona, Sam, and myself. And we met recently again, and we've reviewed the existing audio tours produced for the City of Kitchener for primarily the Victoria Park and Civic Center districts. We have discovered that there are other groups, I should say Ilona did quite a bit of research on this, that there are other groups who have produced walking tours and reached out to them. The City of Waterloo, their Heritage Committee, is working on an app and tour, and we can reach out to them and see how they're doing it. We also talked about having perhaps explore the potential promotion of heritage in February, which is Heritage Month. And finally, with respect to the storyboard for Willow Lake Park, we're involved in doing research. It's a work in progress to determine the script and the photos and the contacts. And that's the update.
Wow, thanks, Jean. That was way shorter than 3 minutes. Very impressive. Wonderful. Are there any questions or comments for the Promoting Heritage Subcommittee? All right, seeing none, those are updates. Thank you all so much for continuing to work on the subcommittees and putting in all of this great work. I know I say this every meeting, but I'm just so delighted that you are all so passionate about these different areas and are putting in the work for it all. Councillor Michaud?
Yeah, Sam, I just want to thank you for all your hard work. You thank all of us every meeting, and I understand that you're meeting at every subcommittee. You're supporting every subcommittee, so you know you're doing a lot of work too. So I just wanted to give you a thank you on that for supporting us.
Well, thank you, Councillor Michaud. You all make it very easy and fulfilling to do that. So Shannon, I will let you know that these are our subcommittees. We did create them based on the interests of our committee members. So if you are interested in joining any of the subcommittees, feel free to let us know. I won't put you on the spot right now, but if you do have any questions about any of them, I'm happy to answer those and we can facilitate that if you are interested. So we can do that moving forward for you.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to be a part of this evening. I really enjoyed it all. It's a lot to take in, but it was really enjoyable, and it was nice meeting all of you virtually. Good to see all your faces now. So
great. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed your first meeting and it wasn't too overwhelming. That also makes me very happy. It's good that you'll be coming back. All right, so those are our subcommittee updates. Our next item is status updates. So Victoria, I will pass it over to you to talk about our best practices updates, our 2021 priorities list, which hopefully we were able to accomplish some of, and any follow-ups.
Yeah, so I don't have any updates with respect to the best practices or HIAs or anything like that to share with the committee. But I did want to let the committee know that this will be my second last meeting with the committee for a little while. I am going to be going on parental leave starting in January. So I just wanted to share that with the committee. There will be someone that will be replacing me over the duration of that leave. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with the committee, and there's a lot of very exciting things going on right now. So I'm sorry to be missing out on some of those things, but I'm sure once I'm back, the important work that this committee does is going to keep continuing on. So yeah, just wanted to share that update.
Great. Well, thank you, Victoria, and congratulations on your upcoming parental leave. I'm sure whoever is going to be filling in for you will have quite a lot of work to do to catch up. So we will certainly miss you, but we're excited for you nonetheless.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that is everything on our agenda. So unless there are any other outstanding items that anyone from the committee has, we will adjourn this final meeting of 2021 of the Heritage Kitchener Committee, and I will see all of you in the new year. Enjoy